I'm a product manager on the platform team in a relatively new team where we are focusing predominantly on accelerating the platform from an investment perspective for ISVs and co-developers.
Yeah.
With me is Omar.
Hey, my name is Omar Chowdhury, and that's really loud, so I'm just going to move it a little bit lower. And we're also on a relatively new team, but if you've certified your applications, then we've kind of merged, and we are basically a team that is looking at our ISV scale motion. So how you interact with Microsoft and trying to help you guys build applications faster in a more smooth experience than you have before.
So you're going to do some work as well. We want to see kind of your background. So how many of you are already building ISV solutions on the platform? Got it. How many of you have published apps to AppSource? Good. How many of you are working more on system integrators, working with customers, building solutions around that? Wow. Got it. How many of you are extending any of our first-party applications, Dynamics? How many of you are building directly on the Power Platform? No first-party. You don't really know, some of you. So, so we can create some clarity there as we go. Very good. It's a mixed group.
Good.
Somebody not building. Is it not on?
No, thank you.
Is that better? Yes. Then I'll have voice again at the end of the session, so that's fantastic. What did I
think it has, does anybody have an app in the OCP catalog? Okay.
Some.
Good.
Okay,
yeah.
Some of you never built an ISV app, and you're just here for the soft seats. There's none of those. That's good. Okay, so let's get started. Always we like to start with kind of the entire picture, looking at the first-party applications and the platform. It's actually, I see every month, I see a larger and larger portion of the partner ecosystem who kind of get the full story, that we have not necessarily done a good job articulating how the Power Platform tie into Dynamic and the first-party app. So it's delightful to see that some of that messaging hopefully is starting to land. So this is really always how we think about the first-party applications on top of the platform, where we have sales, service, marketing, talent, finance, and operation on top of the platform. So when we say the Power Platform, we really mean the underlying pieces. And you may say, look, this slide is old, and we have seen much more fancy wheels, and it's true. But when we are talking about digital transformation from an ISV perspective, this view actually serves us quite well. Because in the middle of all of our first-party apps is the entire ISV or partner opportunity. So whether you are taking our first-party applications and extending them, whether you are building deep vertical solutions, or whether you're building directly on the platform, all of those applications really live in between our first line of applications. And that is really how we think about the last mile of digital transformation. So we say to customers, if you can buy a first-party app off the shelf, by all means, go do it. That's the easiest way to get started. But we also know that very, very few customers actually take a first-party app and just start using it out of the box. Very often there are customizations. And obviously it's because how kind of Boeing go-to-market versus 24-hour fitness is very, very different. It is still the same platform. It can be the same sales app, but the processes, et cetera, are completely different. And that is where the partner ecosystem plays an essential role for us. And then the last category, which is really, sometimes there is no app for that. And this is a space where some of you may think of it as Canvas apps, as PowerApps, but this is much less around digital or specific business processes where you want to wrap UI around. It is more about taking completely bespoke business processes that today typically are pen and paper. Like I am sure you all see the the Pepsi demo where there's a driver going out and visiting all the stores, taking pictures, and submitting orders directly into the CRM app, just with a very, very simple app that has only a few clicks on it and a few tasks. So moving towards these companion apps that are really capturing what else was pen and paper processes. So think of it as a way of augmenting your existing business applications. So that is really kind of the newest part of it. But regardless of which of these paths, ISVs and system integrators can really play a role in all of these different stages. Okay? So let's take a deeper look. This slide I'm sure you have also seen before. So that is really the entire platform under the covers, where we have PowerApps, which we really think of the transactional side of building applications. On the other side, we have the analytical applications powered by Power BI. And then we have Flow in the middle for business process automation, for approvals, for workflows, etc. And as we go into the demos, you'll see how these things get more and more deeply integrated. Under there, we have the common data service. And as you will hear, we always talk about, oh, put the data in the common data service, and it will all be fantastic. And that will be fantastic. But we also know that there are so many data that is not necessarily born in a CRM system. Obviously, our first-party apps, sales on the CE side, natively store data in common data services. But we have ISV apps that more or less is built on competing platforms, where using a connector, you can still use PowerApps and have the data participate in an end-to-end solution. Obviously, we like the data to go in the common data service, but we also like to just have a first step in to have that data participate in applications if that data continue to be born somewhere else. Over time, we assure you would fully migrate and be with us, but it's a good starting point. So that's the connectors. Obviously, it's all built in Azure, which has a lot of advantages, obviously, a proven platform, but also from an ISV or pro developer perspective, there are so many services and connective tissue and value-added services that you can pull in and use as part of your end-to-end solutions. And up top, we have the application layer. And we really think of it as a Power Platform being the customization platform for Dynamics. Whether you want it or not, you are in the PowerApps UI when you're customizing Dynamics. We're the customization platform for Office. So we have a rich partner ecosystem of partners that actually built PowerApps with data backed on SharePoint. We have customers who extend or customize their forms in SharePoint using PowerApps. We have approval workflows in SharePoint, right? And then obviously we have ISV applications built on the platform, as well as partners and customers building directly web apps connecting to the common data service. So all of these options are really there. Obviously, you might have heard there's a new kit that joined the party there for AI Builder. So we'll talk a little bit more about it in a second, but just wanted to make sure that actually fits in there as well, which is really the ability to add AI on top of the data that lives in the common data service. From an extensibility for now, that is not extensible, but there's lots of value you can still gain from an ISV and SI perspective, and not least your customers can gain. So it's more of a value prop for you, the additional value that is there. Now, I want to go one level deeper into the platform. And if you have been with the business application a group for a longer time, you would have thought of the business application as you're extending Dynamics. If you were an ISV, if you were a system integrator, you would always start with Dynamics, if not from a technical perspective, from a licensing perspective. About a year ago now, we introduced, a year and a little bit, we introduced the PowerApp Plan 1 and Plan 2 licenses, which essentially allowed you to take the PowerApps licenses and start building your apps directly there. So think of it, you can both extend Dynamics, but you can also build directly on PowerApps, starting at a different price point, starting with there you go, some excitement. And I know who that was, by the way, without even looking. But it also gives you the opportunity to just package it up differently. And obviously we have the pieces in there. And so when we think about it, we think of this whole bucket as the transactional side of the Power Platform. But I want to put that in perspective here, because I'm sure you all have full clarity on the difference between the Common Data Service and the Common Data Model, right? I can ask any one of you, and you can give me the answer for that is. So let's try anyway. So whenever you are building on any of the first-party applications, and for example, you're using account and you store a transaction, that is really defined in the Common Data Model. So that is the logical representation of our schemas, and you'll see many schemas. We have the schemas that come out of the box with our first-party applications. We are working with industry-specific partners as well to define models for healthcare, higher education, etc. So this is not a Microsoft-only concept. We're really working with a rich ecosystem of partners to help us expand on that. And so when you store a transaction, it's really defined in the Common Data Model and physically stored in the Common Data Service, and that is also where the business logic around that entity lives. And obviously, because the schema is known, building Power BI applications, you still often have to do, we have connectors, so you can connect directly to that account without doing any data movement. But sometimes you have data living elsewhere and still want to do BI. But because the schema is known, you don't have to do data mapping necessarily if it's done in the Common Data Model format. So it takes a lot of the ETL heavy lifting processes out of starting building applications, and you can start building out of the box. And of course, that definition is also available to ISVs who want to extend their applications. So looking at the schema, and you can go on GitHub, it's all defined, you can start building your applications. You will already know if a customer is already using Common Data Service, you know at high extent what their schema would look like as well. So it allows you to very easily go and extend. And obviously that's extensible. So for example, if you are targeting credit unions, you don't want to call it account, you want to call it a member. You can choose to modify account, but what you probably want to do is create a new custom entity for member. You can choose, do I want to contribute publicly and have that be a well-defined schema, or do I just want to use it in my application and as well that participate in the system? So with that, I think we're going to do a double click into the different type of application patterns you can build on the platform.
So guys, now that we are all level set on kind of the Power Platform and what you can do with it kind of from a fundamental perspective, I think one of the things we wanted to touch on is that what are some of the best practices as you're building your application that you should be thinking about, and what are the app patterns that we are now starting to kind of look at apps from as far as what you can build. So one of the things that we have seen with partners who are successful is really they spend a lot of time in the envisioning phase of building their app. They're really focusing on a persona within an organization and understanding the problems that persona is facing. And then when they are developing or identifying that, looking at that problem, they're really trying to figure out what kind of solution that they'll build that will really differentiate themselves in the marketplace. So once they kind of understand how they'll differentiate themselves, they'll really look at how they can leverage not just Dynamics customer engagement or F&O in a silo, but they'll really start looking at kind of the Power Platform, Office 365, a lot of the things that Julie just mentioned, to try to bring together a very unique solution. So these are some things that we should probably keep in mind as we go forward in the future. A lot of the way that we have built our ISV ecosystem has really been in those silos, on top of customer engagement, on top of F&O, and now we really have this amazing opportunity with CDS and the Common Data Model to expand outside of that. When we're building these applications, one of the things that we've seen that's really been successful with partners is that as much as you can, if you can get a customer or a POC that you can build this with, that almost always makes sure that you stay focused and your solution really ends up solving the customer's problem. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into publishing because there's a lot of changes happening with your apps that are on AppSource, that are on OCP catalog, and what's going to happen going forward with that, and how we're going to look to recertify those apps, as well as talk a little bit about our new ISV business application program, which is looking to be a revenue sharing model where we can take some of the revenue and reinvest it into our ISVs. So we're really looking at, you can really build 3 different types of ISVs on the Power Platform, and one of them is a build app. So either you can build a standalone line of business application, you can extend our first-party applications, so sales, service, marketing, and F&O, or you can connect into the Power Platform. So either or Dynamics 365. So either you're bringing data in or you're taking data out of the Power Platform. So we really categorize it in 3 different ways. And a lot of the programs as well as learning content that we've built out is basically going to align to these 3 different build patterns. So how do we think about which pattern to go with and which pattern we fall into? There's really 3 questions we can ask ourselves. One is that do we already have an application that we've built out? And if we do we want to replat it? If we don't want to replat it, then we basically can, do we want to use one of our first-party apps? And if you are planning on using any entities, forms, or business logic from one of our first-party apps, you would then fall into the extend bucket. If you're building a standalone app that doesn't require any of that, then you're basically you're in the build category, and if you're just connecting, then you're basically integrating into us and you're a connect app. So Julie's going to take us through kind of an end-to-end scenario of building an application.
So I have a question before we go. How many of you are focusing on building model-driven apps? How many of you are focusing on canvas apps? How many of you are doing both? Okay.
And how many are doing both customer engagement model-driven plus F&O apps? Okay, cool.
Okay, good. So with that, let's switch over to the screen here. Let's see. So first thing I want to start is actually standing up an environment. Obviously, I have one. How many of you are familiar with the community SKU, the community plan? A few of you. You should all know this. This is the free SKU. Those are the entities I have. But in addition to that, I built my custom entities. So here I have pet, for example. I didn't actually mean to do that. Go back. And my medical records I should have as well somewhere. There you go, my medical history. And in here you see the relationship business rule, views and forms. And in here, if you haven't been in here for a little while, you will see how we take a lot of from the old Solution Explorer for creating forms, etc. And that will start showing up in this environment. So you'll see we get gradual facelifts in this environment to modernize the experience and limit the number of times you have to move back into the old Solution Explorer that we used to have with XRM. So these are just enhancements that you will see all the time. Now, if I was just building a solution for me in this environment, I would just go ahead and start building my app. But since I am planning this app for redistribution, I will start by creating a solution. And so hopefully you've heard by now we are also investing in the solution awareness for all the components being added to the platform. So the solution capabilities, the solutioning capabilities that were part of kind of the Dynamics platform, we are extending into making sure that flows, custom connectors, and Canvas app can also be added to solutions so they can participate in that whole end-to-end process, meaning you can also now add them to packages and publish them to AppSource. No, it is true they don't show up as their own category yet. They will over time, but you publish even Canvas apps as part of the C&E publishing pipeline. So they will show. So yes, they can be published. So in here, I have already created a solution. Before I go there, here are some of the goodness that you should also know about. Obviously, exporting, when I shouldn't have to say this, I'm saying it anyway. Anything you give to a customer for redistribution, anything for publishing, obviously to AppSource, will be managed solutions, right? So that you, that's what you're distributing. We have Solution Checker here. How many of you have heard about Solution Checker? Oh, that's fantastic. I can go home now. Because there's one action I want you all to take by the end of today, this week, is if you have existing applications or solutions, run Solution Checker. Solution Checker will really do static analysis checks, finding errors, performance issues, bottlenecks. And more importantly, when we get to OMA and onboarding AppSource, at some point in time, we will say, don't even try and start the onboarding until you have run the Solution Checker. And we will actually have a Solution Checker specifically optimized for ISV solution that you will access from kind of a new experience we are releasing as well that I'll get into in a second. But the idea being, if you are a little frustrated that sometimes the publishing process to AppSource can take some time, this is a way you can help yourself. Make sure the quality for your apps are there, you know what is expected, so you can kind of reduce that timeline. Solution Checker, you run it in here, you will see it's running, and you can see I have done it over here, and you will actually get a result, like a results back. You'll get an email notification, and you can go and see which errors are there, and you can kind of iterate through that until you're good to go. So I will open my solution here. Oh, I can actually, so in here you can see I have both as well as Canvas apps. And the model-driven apps I have in here, I really have two forms, one for registering the different pets. You can see whether they have insurance or not, their names, what is wrong, or this is actually the medical records. Here it is. I see all the different patients I have, symptoms, how long they've been with me, etc. And then I have the actual medical record. So if I go in and create a new medical record, hopefully, it will actually take me through that form I mentioned before, where there is a well-defined process for each step I'll go through. And there you go. So as I check in a patient, I can go in and enter the name. Today I'm going to see Felix. There you go, and I can look him up. And I can go and add an owner, and I can say whether or not He has insurance, it's a mandatory field. Maybe it's how much I want to spend on him if he's insured versus not. And I can literally go through this entire process. I have diagnosis to it. So this is all good and well. You all are familiar with these kind of process-oriented applications. Now, let's say I started as a single vet, so I would know every single patient there. I remember when I saw them last. I remember they were limping or had an itch, whatever. So it was very personal experience. But now suddenly I have 25 vets. I can't even remember that I ever saw them before, meaning the experience become very impersonal. So I want to create a greeting app to accompany the staff out front. To say, very simple, for the visitors of the day, or patients of the day, I can see who is coming. And my staff can check them in. They can see what happened last time, so you can do a follow-up question, at least so it looks like we care, right? And they can, every time you go to the vet, you might have something else you want. You sign up for one thing, but you just realize 50 other things you want checked as well. That's just how it works. So you can add additional comments as well in the check-in experience. So instead of giving the front staff the CRM or that entire system, you just give them a very simple greeting app. They work against the same data store, meaning it's same patient records, there's no data movement. It is really the same system, but it's an app tailored to a very specific purpose as my business grow. So I'll go back into the environment here, and oops, let's go in. Sorry, they should be sorry for that. Let's try again. Let's see. I will go in, go back into my Canvas app, and I have cheated a little bit, so I've started. But essentially, we'll start from a blank application or from a blank solution. Let's go there, and let's get it started. So all I will do, I will go in and start by connecting to the exact same data set that you saw that I used in the model-driven application. If it's collaborating with me and cooperating, I think it will. Just 1 second. There you go. So first thing I want to go do, I want to go insert a gallery. So it's very simple. Just selecting it, and I will connect to a data source. So there you go. I can just customize that a little bit, and then I want to obviously connect to a data source. Here I have the data sources that I'm already working with, but I want to add, just pretend a new data source. And why? Because if you're used to the model-driven apps, you work with a single data source. The beauty of Canvas apps is you suddenly have access to 240 connectors. So why is that relevant? Because if you have scenarios where you want to combine more data, you want to pull more data in without necessarily moving the data and doing data transfer, you can use a Canvas-driven app. More importantly, you can now embed, you can create a Canvas-driven app or a Canvas app and embed it into model-driven. So now suddenly, in your standard system where you would work over a single data source, you can now add components where you can pull in data for 240 plus data sources. So many is like, why would I mix the two concepts? They're not really two different concepts. They're just richness to your applications, right? So in this scenario, I'm creating a dedicated companion app, but I could as well choose to build something that connects to it. So here I am, I just connected to the data source. So now I actually get the patient name here, and I get created on. Let's say what I really want to see is how long they've been a patient. So I can say patient since, and it just connects to it. I go in and match it with images. Obviously, if it was really fancy, I would have an image per patient, but obviously I don't have time for that. I have enhanced it a little bit and made it look a little bit prettier. The next thing I wanted to do is add that check-in notification. I want to have an input field and send a notification to the vets in the back end. So what I will do, I will actually create a flow button. So flow is also now participating as part of this environment where you can go and create your flow. I'll create a very simple button. So flow can use for approval processes, for business processes, but also just for creating an action that you manually trigger. And so I'm going to add a PowerApps button in here. It's very simple. I will name it patient arrival, and I will add a few steps. First thing I want to say, I want to send an out notification, and I want to send an email. I'm going to send it to myself so I can get a notification. There you go. And I'm going to ask in PowerApps, and I will say next patient has arrived, and I'm done. That's all it takes. So I'll go back into my application, if I can find it. There it is. And I'll go and add 2 buttons. So first of all, insert a there you go, and I'll drag it over here, and I'll say check in, and I'll customize it. Then I will add a text input field. There you go, and I'll drag that over there, and I will just remove the text in it, and I will rename it to be input. There you go. So now I want to hook up my flow. So I will connect, I will select the button, pick an action, and choose flow. Apparently I didn't save it. Maybe I didn't save it. Hold on. Didn't I save it? Doesn't really matter. We'll just take one that I prepared. Same concept. So a PowerApp button that I created before, and I'll connect to it, and it will ask me to complete the formula, to call the name that I gave it, and say check in, and I should be done. So with that, I should be ready to play my app, and it will launch it. So now I can say whenever River shows up, I can say River has arrived, please also check her left ear, and go ahead and say okay. Now what will happen is the vet will get a notification on the mobile device saying that she has arrived, can do the examination, do the extra step, etc. Now last thing I want to do, so now we have kind of added that extra layer of service in there. The last thing I want to do is I've created a Power BI dashboard where I see the analysis of all the different illnesses and diagnoses that are there, and I'll go ahead and actually add that in here, which is pretty simple to do. So I'll go in and insert a control. So we have a Power BI tile that I will go and connect to. So it will ask me to connect to a workspace. I'll connect to my own workspace. I will connect to a dashboard and pull in that, and as it goes. So obviously you can embed dashboards and tiles into PowerApps. You can embed PowerApps into Power BI. That experience is at times a little more powerful because we have the context awareness where you can actually have, as you select the data in the app, they can impact what you're seeing in terms of visualizations on the Power BI side. So there you go, and you can add it in here. I could obviously add it as a separate tab, as I did here, or I can simply embed it as part of my experience. So now if I go back to my original form, I can navigate in between them and see, hopefully, the analysis that will pop up. So that was a little bit of the whole end-to-end for how you can take all these different pieces and join them together. So with that, now I'm done. I'll go back to my solution. I will add the canvas-driven app that I just created, my flow, etc. I will package that up, and I'll give it to Omar.
Awesome, guys. So really quickly, we wanted to go through the AppSource process, but we have a lot of changes that are coming down the pipeline. How many people have heard or have received the notification this last Friday regarding recertifying and the new ISV program and what the requirements are. Okay, so maybe our email didn't reach all the right people. So just to start off, basically we're trying to look at all of our areas and how we can streamline the process, streamline your ability to go and build and publish apps. So if you haven't seen our Getting Started guides, this takes you through the registration, the building, the publication, and the sell process for building an ISV app. Currently, currently where you guys go to publish your applications is in the Cloud Partner Portal, and it's a little bit of a kind of a hokey process you have to go through right now. You do have to email this alias. If you don't have access and give us this information, we'll get you access into the Cloud Partner Portal. But I think the most important thing to know for our current existing partners that have apps on AppSource or the OCP catalog is that as a part of this new ISV program, we are also trying to centralize where you publish your apps. So we are migrating all of the AppSource apps, the backend ingestion, which was for AppSource and the Azure Marketplace, the Cloud Partner Portal. All of those will be migrated to Partner Center. So the same place that Xbox and a lot of the other apps across Microsoft ecosystem are being certified. So this is going to be goodness for the dynamics in the Power Platform as we get into this biannual recertification process. Currently today, if you publish a customer engagement app, you have to go through and recertify it at least twice a year. That's the process we're bringing into place, which was similar to F&O. But by coming to Partner Center, we'll be able to bring in some of the AI capabilities and automation that Xbox had, so it'll reduce the work on your teams. You won't have to go through the entire certification process. We will actually create a trust-based indicator for your applications, and we'll also be able to identify what are the changes that you made in your application and only vet those pieces. So that is coming. You will be able to go into Partner Center on August 31st and be able to go in and sign the new ISV business application contract, and then be able to go through and recertify your app to make sure it's healthy on AppSource. So the apps that have to go through recertification versus certification. Basically, we are asking that all apps either certify or recertify by October 15th. The customer engagement apps, we ask that they upgrade, that are already on AppSource, that you upgrade to 9.x. F&O apps should upgrade to 10.x and get recertified. If you are an OCP catalog app that is an IP for either customer engagement or F&O, we will bring those apps out of OCP and actually publish some of the metadata into Partner Center. So you'll be able to go and see as much of the data as we could pull from OCP in Partner Center, and then we ask that you complete the rest of the information and actually go through the full certification process for those apps by October 15th. So that is the big push that's coming, and it's been coupled with the new ISV business program. So small as possible. 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 So as Julie was building her application, some of the things that we wanted to highlight is that right now, when you're building your applications, if you are creating a Canvas app, you do have to create that solution first and then create a Canvas app from within that solution. As well as if you're creating a flow that goes that's a part of this application, you have to create the solution first and within there create a flow. By the October timeframe, we should be able to give you the capability to build a Canvas app or a flow and then be able to import it into a solution.
Actually, I want to demonstrate exactly how fast the engineering team is. So while Omar thinks this was the plan,
Yeah.
you can go in right now and add your Canvas app and flows already.
Awesome.
We're way ahead of time.
Awesome. Okay, great. So it's there. So the other thing is, I think Julie mentioned it, was making sure your apps are managed apps. Getting those and providing them as managed solutions will also cut some of the back and forth. As well as running the solution checker. So we've been moving a lot of the code analysis rules that we had that you went to a separate portal for. We've moved them into the solution checker, and most of them are there other than some of the noisy rules. So this is, if you run the solution checker, you will be, for the most part, pre-certified. As well as the app checker. So now we are getting Canvas apps that are being published on AppSource. So we do ask that you run the app checker. That's actually in the Canvas app maker experience. So once we take your apps, we will actually run the app checker and make sure that there's no issues or errors that come from that. As well as the flow checker. So if you guys don't know about the flow checker, it also checks for performance and reliability. So as you guys are publishing these applications, we will be also running the flow checker and asking for access to data to be able to run your end-to-end scenarios. So if you have a Canvas app, a flow, and a model-driven app, then we will look to have access to those data sources so that we can also run those functional tests. Julie, you want to get into the
Sure.
platform roadmap?
Okay. So as I said, we've been standing up a new team looking at the platform from an ISV perspective. And that means there are some new investments you will see light up as well. We are really focusing across 3 areas. Not all of them are specific to ISVs, but at least are very interesting from an ISV perspective. So first is really about building and deploying. So our pro developer tooling story, which you don't have to tell us, we know that has been somewhat neglected for a while. So we are booting that back up and investing quite extensively in the tooling from a pro developer experience, and we'll talk a little bit through that. Then we have a category for managing your apps at scale, which is what we will be lighting up with a new experience that is currently go by the name the ISV Studio. And then extensibility, and that I will actually cover now because I can see we're running a little low on time. So for extensibility, today we get more and more requests from partners who want to take the applications they have built and embed them into Teams, into SharePoint, etc. So that SDK that we are using for embedding apps, Canvas apps in particular, we are now actually making publicly for third parties. So how many of you have like web apps or apps in Azure, not running on the business application, but running in Azure? There's a few. So with this new SDK, you can essentially take the player and the maker SDKs for Canvas app and embed that into your multi-tenant SaaS applications. So you can allow your customers, you can define an area of your app where you want to run a Canvas app, which you can allow your customers to actually have a space where they can customize the experience. So it's pretty cool, it's in preview. If you go to the Insider portal, you will be able to see that there. So what that essentially is allow kind of ISVs building multi-tenant SaaS applications to give them the power of the maker experiences to bridge out the users into the maker experience to build their own applications and customize. So from the pro tooling perspective, there's quite a few improvement areas. For example, have you all heard about the component framework, PCF? Good. So obviously, that as a mechanism to take the UI that we already deliver out of the box and extend it. Create your own visualizations. We have tooling for that as well. Currently we have CLI supporting it, and we are working on VS extensions as well, so you can go into Visual Studio and start building, both creating projects and solutions, but also to create kind of your PCF controls. Solution checkers we talked about. ALM, if you did not already plan to, please check out the workshop tomorrow morning on ALM, where we'll also be working through very dedicated DevOps tasks to help you automate the end-to-end process building on the platform, and then the third-party SDKs that I mentioned. So component framework, which many of you already familiar with. We do obviously recommend take a look at that, see how you can extend your solutions. Over time, we want obviously find a way for you to also publish them to AppSource. And the idea is moving forward, obviously every single component we introduce to the platform, we make solution aware, so that not like we did last time with Canvas app, had a lag time where you could actually create solutions, but the idea is that we add new components, they are solution aware out of the box, so they can participate in the solutioning system and be published and pushed to AppSource. So this is really how you can think about the forms, how they look today. These are some of the examples of what is actually being done with PCF today to customize that experience and make it more compelling. And of course, they're reusable across solutions and applications. And this is really the work that we're doing for Azure DevOps as well, for the pipeline integration, for automating kind of the back-end pieces. Solution checkers we already talked about. And then there's ISV Studio. How many have heard about the ISV Studio? Good, because you're not supposed to. Now you can. So the ISV Studio is really a way for you to gain insight and manage your applications as they are installed across customer tenants. So I come from a SQL background, and I joined the business app, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you create your solutions in your own environment, you package them up, and you distribute them to a customer. And what happens then? You don't know, unless you go and visit customers. We want to give you an experience where you can continue to have insight into what happens to your solutions. So this is an experience, it's in private preview right now, and we are going into public preview at Inspire. And the idea is really that for all the applications that you publish to AppSource or your solutions, you will be able to see which tenant has installed it. So let's say 5 customers go and install it, you will actually see every single tenant that your app is installed in. You will start to get error, like success rate for install and failure. What you may not know today on AppSource, a customer is trying to install, maybe 500 customers tried to install, 400 of them did not succeed. You would want to know that, right? So we are giving you insight into that as well, so you can pay attention and go and optimize that experience. We will also show you other like telemetry, like which regions, where your customer is located, but also which versions of your apps are these customers actually using. So this is the first click stop of the portal. It's really focused around telemetry. Moving forward, we want to add much more goodness to that experience for how you can manage deployment and push out deployments, etc. So that's another reason why you want to get that app checker going and get published on AppSource, because that's really how we unlock a lot of these insights. Cool? Useful? Interesting? You don't really care? You've had enough? You want to go out and have coffee? We think this is pretty cool. Okay, so just summarizing the roadmap specifically from an ISV and pro developer perspective. So today we had the studio in preview. We have the ProDev tooling for PCF, and we have the embedded SDK. These are all in preview. Come July, the studio will go into public preview. We will be adding VS extensions for creating PCF controls. And for us, PCF controls, because it was new, we had to go and do the tooling. But the experiences we create for the CLI and the VS extensions is something we will extend. So you can think about plugins as well, web resources. We want to give you ability to use Visual Studio for those same development experiences moving forward, which will land closer towards October. We will have inside the ISV Studio, we also want to light up this special version of the solution checker with more dedicated rules for ISVs to go through when you go and publish. So think of this, the studio, as the one place for ISVs to go and find your tooling, deploy your apps, and analyze your apps. And then that's also when we will be lighting up the Azure DevOps integration. And then for October, which is really our marketing moment, is where a lot of this will actually move into general availability. But there's a few more topics that are good to just highlight. I'll go quickly here from a, not specific to ISVs, but are super important still for you to be aware of. PowerApps portal being available for the Power Platform, so you can create web pages, you can make your content available to external users. Unified client interface. If you're not already on it, people, get started. You want to get there. We get actually quite a bit of customers yelling at us for not all partners being on UCI, because as they start to move, it creates a disjointed experience. So I know a lot of you have already moved and are starting to move, but please, that's an area that's actually starting to be a little bit painful for our customers if you are still on the old web client. The whole embedding of Canvas apps into model-driven apps, and obviously the continued work on the solution awareness. Last one is AI Builder. As I said, it is not extensible from an ISV ecosystem right now. However, value for your customers, all the data that your applications accrue to the platform, they can do AI on top. So while you may not be able to do any with it, the value for your customers and attracting them to your app versus an app on a competitive platform will be huge. So think of it in that perspective as a selling point for you guys.
Yeah. So guys, with the little time that we have left, I just want to take you guys directly into a home that we've built for essentially everything ISV business applications. So here we're basically going through, and this links off of ISV Hub. It has everything from value prop information that we've done with Gartner. You can come here and you can get the FAQ for our new ISV business program, and also be able to sign up for the nurture emails. So as soon as our contract for that program is finalized, you would then be a part of that and get that ahead of time. You'll see some case studies, but really you can then get into our develop page, which will again take you based on our developer patterns, takes you from the least amount of resistance to the highest amount of resistance. If you want to build an app, the start building, start extending, these are our getting started guides for each one of these build patterns. And you have a lot of other support, kind of support avenues here, as well as we'll continue to build out the accelerator content here. So if you are thinking about building an application and it's in one of these industry verticals, you definitely want to use one of our industry accelerators, which is basically a data model for that industry. So if you come here, you can get all the information you need for them. As well as getting in contact with our communities, our partners who help other partners build, so our ISV dev centers, as well as getting a good understanding of our publish process. So we will be updating this as we roll out what the the annual publishing process will be for the Power Platform and Dynamics, but you essentially have all of the key steps and what you need to go build your application and get it published to Dynamics or to AppSource, as well as basically build a business around your application. So all of the content you need, we'll keep updating it and bringing it to this to this ISV business application kind of experience. So from there, I think that's it. So I don't know if we have time for questions.
So check out the additional sessions. So there are obviously sessions on PCF. There's a session on a power session on the solution checkers. So go and check out those sessions, which really deep dive into a lot of this as well. Obviously also session for PowerApps and Flow, Vision and Roadmap, which also accrue to everything you guys are doing. But check out those deeper dive on the sessions. Come visit us in the booth. We would love to have your feedback. If you want to sign up for some of the preview programs, please do reach out. We'll get you onboarded as fast as we can. And for Studio, check it out when we launch next month. In the meantime, get your apps published to AppSource.
Yeah. And we're here for a couple minutes, so
Sure.
if you want to talk and ask questions.